Guys, welcome back to part two of Box to Box, the football talk show on Sportology TV. In this part, we've got a former Leeds and Man City hardman, a former England international, somebody who's going to be talking to us about Leeds' promotion up to the Premier League, none other than Danny Mills. Danny, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. No worries at all.
How are you doing?
No, I'm good. Obviously, it's been great that obviously return of football. I think I've been to 6 or 7 games now, which has been really good. A little bit strange to start with, obviously with no fans in and around it. I was fortunate enough to be at Derby on the day where, Leeds were already promoted because they got promoted on the Friday. They became champions on the Saturday, but obviously officially on the Sunday when they played Derby. Obviously, then it was a real time to celebrate. So, no, I've been one of the very, very fortunate few that's been able to get to see live football.
Danny, I wanted to talk about Leeds, but before I go to that, I want to talk about yourself. A lot of people want to leave football. Some people go into coaching, management. Did that ever, ponder in your brain to take that route, become a manager, become a coach?
Yeah, I did my badges. Obviously, I got injured at 30, so I retired quite early. During that time, I did my coaching badges, did my UEFA B coaching license, and then just decided it was not too much like hard work. I wasn't prepared to dedicate the time to it. It's coaching's 24/7 for not always a lot of reward. It's all right if you're Frank Lampard or Steven Gerrard, you go in at the very, very top and you have all the resources available. But when you start at the bottom, and you start sort of academy level, you're in at 8 o'clock in the morning. You're not leaving until 8 o'clock at night. You're watching games constantly. It's not a great life. And I had 4 young children at the time. Obviously, I've still got 4 children, but they're not so young. But I just decided that it wasn't for me, and I just felt I owed the family a bit of time at home. So I decided not to go into the coaching route. There's part of me that maybe arrogantly still thinks that I could do it, especially sort of the manager route and getting the best out of people. But I think now, having been sort of out of that for 10 years, it'd be very, very difficult to go back into.
Danny, now you're a pundit, so you come on Sky Sports.
Allegedly a pundit. I'm not sure you can use that term loosely.
A pundit stroke presenter, we'll call it. Even on TalkSport, you're on, a few shows there, a few times a week. How's that life treating you, being, getting involved in the media side of things?
It's been great. I sort of fell into it, really. Back in the day when you could actually have sort of a relationship with journalists, and you could speak to people and they would look after you, you would look after them with little stories, and, things would be swept under the carpet if you gave them a little exclusive on the side. And, I go back to my Leeds days, the likes of Ian Dennis, who's obviously now a senior football reporter at BBC 5 Live. I used to do interviews in the car with Deno and give him little tidbits. And even when I was at Man City, if there's a breaking story, I'd ring him up and I'd say, Deno, you need to get on this straight away. Obviously the source was always unnamed, but I think that the club always knew that it was me that was involved. But we just had a good relationship. I was always pushed out there to give my opinion sort of after games and that type of thing. And it just sort of just went from there. I started to learn from the guys at 5 Live who were fantastic. Lots of John Murray, Ian Dennis, Mike Ingham, some of the best in the business. You sit and you travel with them. And it gave me just a fantastic life to still be involved in football, to travel, to get around. And now I get very, very fortunate. I travel the world, which is fabulous, and still watch football and be involved in it without the pressure of having to be the manager. So it's like, I always think doing what I do is almost like being the coach, the manager, criticising other people, but having no responsibility, which is the best of both worlds.
Well, the Leeds team that you were part of, it was a great team, had big names. What was it like being part of a team like that?
Well, I was very, very fortunate. I was at Charlton at the time, and then I went to Leeds, very, very young, sort of 21, just turned 21 years of age. We had a very, very young, hungry side. Obviously, we went on for third in the Premier League, 2 European Cup semi-finals, UEFA Cup, and obviously Champions League. We had 2 internationals pretty much for every single position. The camaraderie was fantastic. It really was. It was a young group of lads that were, let's say, they lived life to the full. They enjoyed themselves, and we all did. I had children at the time, so I used to mix with Nigel Martin, David Batty, Jason Wilcox, sort of more of the senior members of the team, if you like. You know, when you've got family, you've got slightly other priorities. But it was fantastic. You know, I had 5 magnificent years at Leeds. Some really, really good times. Obviously, some tough times as well when it started to fall apart financially. And that was down to us, you know, when we didn't make Champions League after being, I think we were top at New Year's Day. And obviously we fell away and finished 5th. But it's just playing football, you know, when you're doing well, when you're winning, it's just the best feeling ever. You know, you want to go into training every day. You know, you can't wait for games to come up. And all this sort of, playing Saturday, Tuesday. That's brilliant because you don't train. You turn up. Brian Kidd was brilliant. How are you feeling today, lads? Oh, I feel a bit sore, a bit tired. Oh, don't worry. We'll just do half an hour and you'll be home. And I'll be back home for 12 o'clock. It's like the best job on the planet. You know, it was absolutely fantastic.
Danny, before we talk about Leeds getting promoted back to the Premier League, just going back to what you're saying, what was the one team that you look forward to playing the most? We know that United, Leeds had that little bit of a rivalry there. Which team did you want to play against, or you were up for it the most?
We had a real intense rivalry with Arsenal.
Okay.
Especially, that was at Highbury at the time. We always did very, very well against Arsenal. In fact, we stopped them winning the title the season that we were struggling a little bit. We beat them on the penultimate game of the season. Harry Kewell and Mark Viduka were just exceptional that day. But that meant Manchester United won. Games against Manchester United were incredible. And it's a very, very strange atmosphere because it's not really a derby as such, but it's War of the Roses, you know, Yorkshire versus Lancashire, you know, white versus red, all those types of things thrown into the mix. It was very, very spiteful, I have to say. You know, the crowd on both sides were vicious and below the line. You know, there was lots of songs sung that shouldn't have been. Manchester United often had Galatasaray flags in the crowd as well. And obviously, you know, sadly, we lost 2 fans in Galatasaray. It went both ways and it was nasty. It was a really nasty atmosphere. But those big games, the ones you wanted to play in, you know, those are the ones that you look forward to, that you wanted to do well in, and, you know, you wanted to beat your fiercest rivals.
Well, we do have to talk about Leeds getting promoted to the Premier League, first time in 16 years. How does it feel, you know, having played for Leeds, and, you know, how does it feel that now that is where a lot of people say where they should rightly be? Well,
no one deserves to be by rights in the Premier League. But I think, you know, Leeds is a club that the Premier League will be better for it. You know, Championship, League One, you're looking at 20, 30,000 people sold out every single week. Leeds has a huge tradition going back to the 70s, really, the 60s and 70s. Obviously, when they were, you know, the winning titles and challenging for European Cups, and then they had a little bit of success, obviously, in the early 90s when they won the last league before football began, before the Premier League started. You know, Leeds were Division 1 champions before the Premier League. And then we had a little bit of success, and then of course it fell apart financially. And that season I wasn't at Leeds. I was at Middlesbrough on loan that season. I came back for pre-season, sort of ready to play in the Championship. Was then shipped off because obviously financially they couldn't afford to do it, and it was tough. I didn't really want to leave. I had 4 years left at Leeds. You know, it's an area that I still live around. You know, I like being there, and it was tough. And seeing it since, you know, there's been some really dark days. You know, dropping down into obviously League One at times, getting promotion. Simon Grace, and, you know, doing a magnificent job. There's been some bizarre owners in that time, some strange appointments as managers. But I think rightfully now, the club is on a secure footing financially. Andrea Radrizzani has done a magnificent job in that. He took a massive gamble on getting Bielsa in, because although he's done incredibly well and he had a fantastic CV and a great history, nobody quite knew how he was going to do in the Championship. No one quite knew how he was going to do in England, full stop. So it was a big, big gamble, you know, to take him on. But one that has worked out. And for the club, for the city, I'm absolutely delighted, because there will be 36,000 guaranteed every single week once fans are allowed back in. And Leeds are a big club. You know, when you look at the teams, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but the teams that have gone down in Bournemouth and Watford, or Norwich even, you don't travel around the world and see many of those fans. You don't see many shirts. because of what happened in the 60s and the 70s and even in the 90s when Leeds won the title. There are Leeds fans all over the world. You know, a lot of big association in Ireland, big association in Australia with the players we've had down the years as well. So, you know, I think this is great for the Premier League. You know, Leeds are still a global club. Had they have missed out this season, and it have been another 3 or 4 years, all those young kids now that are basically forced to go and watch and be Leeds fans, you know, when they're not successful, you know, let's be honest, dads drag their kids along. You are going to be a Leeds fan. You will be a Leeds fan because this is what I did and all the rest of it. Finally, now they've got something to be proud of, you know, and they've got a club that's in the Premier League, and hopefully it'll continue for another generation.
Just talk to me about Bielsa there. You spoke about Bielsa just then. Like you said, it was a big risk bringing him in. But he seems to just, like last season, it was crazy how Leeds didn't get promoted last season. But this season, he seems to just pull it through. And a lot of people, I know a lot of former players, people like Ander Herrera, for example, speaks highly of Bielsa at his time when they spent together. But what do you make of Bielsa at Leeds United?
Well, he's bizarre. He's unique. You know, let's be honest. He was manager, obviously, of Argentina when we played them in the World Cup in 2002. They were favourites to win that tournament. He went to Lazio for, 2 days? And decided that, you know, something changed in that time and he walked out. You know, he's always been known for a high-pressing team, high energy that often runs out of steam. Maybe that happened a little bit last season. Yeah. But he is unique. I think when the Leeds owners went to interview him, he had a dossier of 40, 50 pages. You know, everything was covered. I mean, he sleeps at the training ground. He's got a 1-bedroom flat, you know, in Wetherby above a shop where, you know, he walks to the training ground, he sleeps at the training ground. We've all seen it. You know, he's constantly in his Leeds United tracksuit. I think that's the only part of clothing that he owns and that he ever wears. We had the 100th anniversary, you know, of Leeds United where, you know, the great and the good from around the world, you know, descended back on Ellen Road. Had a fantastic night. Everybody's in black tie. Vinnie Jones comes in from LA. Gordon Strachan's coming down from Scotland. You got players coming in from Ireland. You know, all over the place. Lucas Radebe came in from South Africa. You know, a couple of Aussie lads came in as well. And then suddenly you've got, you know, Bielsa in the middle of this photo in his baggy Leeds tracksuit. It's just, he is unique. I think he speaks more English than people give him credit for. Obviously, he doesn't do any interviews. He doesn't do any one-to-one interviews with anybody. You know, we all know about Spygate and Derby and then obviously the 4-hour press conference that he held after that to say how much information he had on every single team and player. But what he has created is an energy and a work rate in that team and a way of playing that works. He's improved players no end. There is always a lot of, I suppose, debate about Patrick Bamford, who works incredibly hard, has scored a decent amount of goals, but has missed some chances. And everyone's saying, well, why does he keep picking him? Why does he keep picking him? Because he believes in the system. He believes in his way. And it's a bit, well, obviously, he's almost like godfather to Pep, to Pochettino, who are on the phone to him constantly. You know, they're always ringing him up, always speaking to him. And it's a bit like Pep. Pep has one way of playing. You know, plan B is just do plan A better. And Bielsa's very much the same. You know, there isn't a plan B. It's just be better at being good at plan A. And I think, you know, what he has done this season with the players that he's brought in, the players that he's improved, the way that Leeds have played has just been sensational. And hopefully he can go and do that in the Premier League.
Which of those players have particularly impressed you this season? Who's really stood out for you?
You've got players like Stuart Dallas that have been moved around all over the place, that have played 5 or 6 different positions. I think he has really been outstanding. Luke Ayling, you know, who was at Bristol City a few years back, has suddenly sort of come to the fore as, you know, was possibly best right back in the Championship. Liam Cooper, you know, who'd have thought, you know, 2 or 3 years ago he would go on to be captain of a promotion-winning side and champions. Ben White has been sensational. Obviously, Leeds lost Pontus Jansson last year, who was trying to make himself a little bit of a cult figure and a little bit of a hero at times, and that was to his downfall. And he brought in Ben White, who was unknown. You know, he'd had a couple of loan spells. I think he'd done reasonably well at Peterborough. but nobody really sort of knew how good he was going to be. And Ben White has been possibly, well, no, he hasn't. He has been the best centre half, in the Championship. Yeah. Calvin Phillips has been absolutely brilliant. Pablo Hernandez, he's used him sparingly at times, but he's got that craft, that guile that you need. All the players have improved. There isn't a single player in that squad that hasn't improved. And when you go back to sort of last pre-season, when he brought in the 3 loan signings, new signings that came in, Leeds were in Australia playing Manchester United at the time. I think Bielsa did 2 days in Australia and then flew back and then just ran and made sure that the new signings were fit and up to speed. Because that's how dedicated he is. He wasn't bothered. He's not bothered about razzmatazz. He's not bothered about celebrations. I don't know. Obviously, most people have seen the celebrations on the pitch, and he was sort of like pushed forward, and then he sort of just slipped back into the background and let the players get on with it. I think he's a very unassuming, very, very humble man that just absolutely loves football.
Now that Leeds are in the Premier League, we've seen many teams come up and maybe not strengthen the teams. We saw that with Norwich. They came up, they never strengthened the team, and they've gone straight back down. What do Leeds need to do in this summer transfer window for yourself?
Well, the centre-half issue is a big problem. I think that obviously Brighton have said that they're looking forward to having Ben White back, and they're looking forward to working with them. So that leaves a massive gap in the defence. So that would, if Ben White's not going to be there next season, that needs to be addressed. And then I think on top of that, you probably need another centre-half as cover. Liam Cooper's had a couple of injuries this season. He's been magnificent captain, but you need strength in depth in the Premier League. The goalkeeper situation is going to be interesting. Obviously, with Kiko Casilla, came back into the last game of the season, the game against Derby. But is he the long-term number one? Meslier's come in and done very, very well, but he's very, very young. He's only 18, so that's, can you go in with a really, really young keeper into the Premier League? And apart from that, it's just a centre forward. So I think to help out Patrick Bamford, to give him some competition. I've said all along, Patrick Bamford works his socks off. He's been absolutely superb, and he's really impressed me this season with his dedication, with his work rate. And he's taken some stick from Leeds fans and from a lot of other fans for missing chances. But he keeps going and he gives everything. So I think if you don't want to overdo it like maybe Villa did last year with about sort of 12, 13 ins and outs, because it doesn't work. You can sometimes get away with it. I think they've got to go in like the Burnley, the Sheffield United route of strengthening 2 or 3 areas, up in the quality of the first 11, and going from there. But if they can keep hold of Ben White, I think Calvin Phillips is definitely going to stay. They've got the spine of the team, half the spine of the team is sorted. And around that, you can just add, little bits of quality here and there.
Danny, do any of the relegated teams from the Premier League interest you? So any players from the relegated teams like Bournemouth, Watford, Norwich, any players in them teams that sort of interest you and think could be a good fit for Leeds United?
Well, there's obviously, you've got the 2 strikers at Bournemouth. I think, someone like Josh King, would be superb in that. Obviously, you've got experience. There's a couple of their players that sort of are out of contract, aren't there? That could be, but it depends how much sort of wages that they demand. Norwich have a couple of young players that you'd maybe be interested in as well. Watford have some quality. So yeah, without doubt, all those teams have quality, but I suppose it's how big are their wages? How long a contracts are they going to want? So, but I would expect that Bielsa is going to probably look maybe to the South American market, maybe someone that we've not really heard of. The signings that he's always brought in, his dossier, his scouting reports, his knowledge of world football is exceptional. So it might not be the signings that everyone goes, oh, wow, that's going to be amazing. We might all be going, oh, Google, typing away, who's this player? Where has he come from? What is he? And all of a sudden, it becomes a star. So I think that's where Bielsa will go, and he'll certainly be looking for value for money.
Danny, where do you think the realistic table target is for Leeds for next season?
Got to be 15th, 16th, something like that. I've said it. If they can be sort of safe with 3 or 4 games to go, you take that all day long. You've got to. That first season is purely about consolidation and staying in. and not maybe doing a Villa and going down to the last game and sort of fingers crossing and relying on technology to give you or not to give you a goal that wasn't like in the Sheffield United game. Yeah. You don't really want it nail biting going right down to the wire. If you can be safe with 4 or 5 games to go, you take that. Simple as that. So sort of 15th, 16th would be a very, very good season, and I think everybody would take that right now. Any higher than that would be absolutely amazing. But I think you have to be realistic. The Premier League is very, very competitive. Sheffield United have done incredible this season, but that doesn't mean that Leeds can go on and do the same thing. So they've just got to make sure that they stay in the division, get to 40 points or 36 points as soon as possible, and then just relax and enjoy it.
Danny, before we let you go, I just need to ask you one more question about the Premier League. Liverpool have been phenomenal this year. They've absolutely just stole the league. I think they probably won it by January, really. So we know they've had a phenomenal season. What do you think is going to happen next season? Do you feel like Liverpool have it in them to win it again? Or we know Pep's a great manager. He's going to look to strengthen again and look to win his titles that he feels or his. How do you see next season going?
I think Liverpool have to be the favourites. Their level of consistency over the last 2 seasons has been absolutely phenomenal. Okay, they've lost a couple of games once they'd won it. That was always likely to happen. It's very, very difficult, however professional you are, however determined you are to go for records. After 30 years of not winning the title, they won it. There was always going to be a slight downturn. And even if that's only 5-10%, it gives the opposition a chance to get at you. But I think when you look at their side, it's young, it's hungry. They're adding quality to it all the time. The front three is exceptional. You've got Minamino coming in that maybe took 6 months to settle, but will be better for it next season. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson, 2 fantastic fullbacks. Virgil van Dijk, Gomez at centre half, Alisson the goalkeeper. Henderson, Milner, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Keita, Fabinho. There aren't many weaknesses in their squad. Maybe a number 9, to maybe play a little bit different at times and give them goals. Obviously, Firmino has been sensational, but just the 1 goal at Anfield this season. Liverpool will be there or thereabouts. Manchester City have got to go some to catch them. And I think Manchester City is all about recruitment. Manchester City have scored more goals than anybody else. Going forward, they are exceptional. They are absolutely devastating to play against. But defensively, they've been below par. I think, 9 Premier League games they've lost this season? That's way too many. You can probably lose 4 and go on and win the title. You can't lose 9. So City have got to bridge that gap. And that means getting in, I think, a couple of real quality centre-halves. Because that's where, since Vincent Kompany left and Laporte got injured, that's where Manchester City have been lacking.
Sorry, Dan, just before we go, you spoke about Henderson there, Jordan Henderson picking up the Player of the Year. There's a lot of debates on social media. There's a lot of debate. I was watching Sky Sports. They have a Sunday supplement. Journalists were talking about it. It seems to be that some people would have thought Kevin De Bruyne would have got that award. What about yourself?
Well, I would say, is Jordan Henderson the best player at Liverpool? No, he's not. Has he been the best player at Liverpool? No, he's not. Has he been the most influential? Yes, he has. As a captain, as a leader, he has been absolutely incredible. And there's been big games where he's dragged his kin, a bit maybe like Roy Keane used to. Maybe not quite in the same sort of fashion, but when there's been tough games, he's been there. He's stepped up. And I think there's a little bit of the romantic in the decision to give him Player of the Year because of the 30-year gap that they've not won the Premier League. Obviously, he lifted the European Cup last season. I look at it, if you were going to go and buy a player from Liverpool right now, how far down the list would Jordan Henderson be? I think he'd be 5 or 6 down the list. How does Mane feel? We've been going about Mane all season, who saying, Mane should be up for the Ballon d'Or, because he's been so good. Is Jordan Henderson going to be anywhere near the Ballon d'Or? No, he's not. He's influential, yes. Incredible captain, yes. Magnificent leader. But the best player, I don't think so, and I think this is where maybe the journalists have gone for, because of the history and the 30 years and he's captain and everything else. They've not necessarily gone for the best player. Kevin De Bruyne is just been unbelievable this season. Mane has been absolutely unbelievable this season. So, if you go across the Premier League, Harry Kane, Jamie Vardy, they don't even get a mention within that. The amount of goals that they scored, Aubameyang, don't even get a mention in there. Even Salah's been very, very good. Van Dijk's been great. Alisson's been superb. So, yeah, he's been incredible. And it's absolutely sensational for Liverpool and what they've done. But do I think he's the best player this season? No, I don't. And people can argue with that or whatever. But that's not to say he hasn't been absolutely brilliant.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Danny. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Pleasure.
It's been great. And hopefully, once the season gets going again, we can get you back on and get your views once they're in the Premier League and it gets going.
It's next week, isn't it? The season starts. That's what it feels like. It's only just round the corner, so it's like
12th
a couple of weeks off.
Apparently, 12th of September.
Well, but by the time the Champions League finishes and then sort of internationals kick in, I think that the season's gonna feel like the season starts next week. I think.
Yeah. And a quick one, actually, just a one-name answer. Who's getting promoted to the Premier League who's going to win the playoffs from the Championship?
I think it's going to be Swansea versus Cardiff, and it's a good job that there's going to be no fans at Wembley for that one.
Who's going to win that?
Swansea. I think Swansea. They're on the ascendancy. Brentford have lost the last few games, and we saw they struggled. The sending off was a bit dubious, but I think when a team comes in on confidence and they've got the momentum, they've got the belief, very, very difficult to overcome that. And I think the way that Swansea are playing, the run that they've gone on to sneak into the playoffs, they're on a high. It's like this. It's a massive bonus for them, squeezing into the playoffs on the last day of the season. Forest dropping out. So I think Swansea are going to be very, very difficult to beat.
Just as well, there's no fans there. Just as well. Swansea, Cardiff.
Yeah. Oh. So Swansea, Cardiff. All those people coming on the train into Wembley. I mean, yeah, not a good idea. Not a good idea.
Well, thank you so much, Danny.
Thank you very much, Danny. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
That was Danny Mills. Great to have him on the show. Make sure you stay tuned. We have lots more coming up. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell button so you get the notifications. See you next time.